Hi everyone! So if you couldn't tell from the opening song, this last week at work, my coworkers and I were talking about things that we enjoyed when we were little kids. One of the big things now is being a 90s baby and looking back at what made the 90s so great. So today I've compiled a list of my top 10 favorite 90s kids TV shows. In order to count as a 90s kids TV show, obviously it has to have been playing during the 90s. So while there were a lot of great shows during the early 2000s that 90s babies would have enjoyed, I'm not going to be including them on this list. So let's get started. So for number 10, I have Doug. I used to love Doug as a little kid. It was one of those shows that every morning before school I would be watching. And while I can't remember too much about it now, I do remember I loved it, and I can always remember what the main character looked like. For number 9, I have Goosebumps. Goosebumps was a kid series that so many of us had enjoyed reading when we were kids, and then when it became a TV series, like, it couldn't even get better. I remember the Goosebumps series actually really terrified me when I was a little kid. I mean, some of those episodes were really kind of heavy for kids. One of my favorite episodes from the series was Welcome to Horrorland, and I can actually remember that was a 2-part episode, and I remember the channel that my mom and I had watched it on had aired part 1, and then they stopped showing the series, and so we never saw part 2 until way years later when the Goosebumps series was released on DVD. For number 8, I have Rugrats. Rugrats was another one of these great kids TV shows that you most likely could identify with one of the characters. For me, I was always more of a Chucky fan. Chucky was shy and quiet and just kind of nerdy, but deep inside I always really connected with Angelica as well. For number 7, I have Little Bear. Little Bear is definitely more of a little kids TV show, but that did not stop me from watching it. I absolutely loved Little Bear. There was something about the world that it took place in that just really fascinated me. I can remember loving it to the point where I even purchased a Little Bear book, and I can actually still remember the storyline of it, and it was Little Bear was trying to become an astronaut, and he went on these adventures, and at the end of the day he comes back home and he thinks he's on a different planet. So I really enjoyed the whole concept of Little Bear. I loved the characters, and it was just a show that I could always just watch. Right up there with Little Bear, although it's not on the list and it's more of an honorable mention, was Franklin. Franklin was another show that I think came on around the same time as Little Bear, and it was another one of those same kind of concept shows with talking characters and morals, but it was another great one. For number 6, I have Legends of the Hidden Temple. Now this one differs from mostly all of them because it was a game show that was on Nickelodeon, and it was the best. I remember wanting so much as a little kid to be able to go on Legends of the Hidden Temple. Although even to this day, I think I would still be pretty terrified by the temple guards that were inside. Number 5, I have Rocket Power. There was something about Rocket Power that really attracted me to the show, and I'm really not quite sure what it was, but I loved it. I was always able to connect with Squid on that show. He was the really brainy kid, and he was really hilarious because he was so unathletic compared to the other 3. And even to this day I can still remember my favorite episode from that show, and that was when they're on this hunt to find Tony Hawk, and they go into his kingdom, I guess you could call it, and in order to get to Tony Hawk they have to go through a series of difficult obstacles with their skateboards, and for some reason I really loved that episode. For number 4, I have another considered horror kids TV show, and that was Courage the Cowardly Dog, which, looking back now, I realize it's not scary, but as a little kid that show could have terrified people. I loved Courage's owners. They were so hilarious the way they would constantly bicker. They were actually a really realistic couple, and Courage was just, he was absolutely adorable, and you know, he feared whatever we would be fearing. For number 3, I have Cat Dog. Cat Dog I wish was still on the air because I just went back and looked at an old YouTube episode, and it was just as funny as I remember it being. The whole premise of a cat and a dog being combined because they're so different and yet they can still become friends is really just a great kind of idea for a show. Okay, now we are getting into our top 2. The only thing that makes these 2 different is that my number 1 choice I decided is more nostalgic, simply because my number 2 choice is still on the air. So for number 2, I have Spongebob Squarepants. This was a show that had started in the 90s and is still on TV because it's just that popular. However, the SpongeBob that I grew up with, I consider to be a lot better than the SpongeBob that exists now. And that's not really just because I'm older. I mean, I've looked back at SpongeBob episodes from the first 3 seasons, and I've looked at SpongeBob episodes from like these past few years, and I really don't think anything beats those classic SpongeBob episodes. Okay, so for number 1, I have picked a show that I absolutely loved, not just because of the characters, but it was something that I always enjoyed about the way that it was drawn and the landscapes and the way the city looked. I loved the storylines, and that is Hey Arnold. Arnold was such a kid of morals, and so I guess that made him a little unrealistic, but I absolutely loved the show. There was something about each of the characters that made me laugh. I love the way, as I said, I love the way that the illustrator made it. I always, for some reason, even as a kid, I even enjoyed when the show would open and it would be like that nice city landscape with maybe the sun rising. I also thought it was hilarious how each of the characters were drawn. I mean, Arnold really does have a football head, and I remember loving that show so much that in the 4th grade I had won money from a competition, and I spent that money on the Hey Arnold movie, which I still own and still watch on occasion. So there you have it. There's my top 10 list of kids TV shows that I really enjoyed from the 90s. There's a lot of shows that I didn't mention that I also loved, some honorable mentions like Ed, Edd and Eddy and Arthur. These were also great shows, but they just didn't make it on the list, but that doesn't mean I love them really any less. So if you're a 90s baby, let me know what you think of my list, or let me know what kind of shows you think I have missed. Alright everybody, have a great week. Hopefully we finally have a weekend here in Schuylkill County without any rain, and until next time, peace out. Also, it was just announced that the US Supreme Court has finally knocked down the ban on same-sex marriage, so congratulations America on this very historic day.